I know that Museum of Chernobyl has become a focal point of attention, and it has its own community, and many people from Pripyat would come to visit. And when we had this forum called Pripyat 50, there were a lot of people came, and in the 90s, this sort of activity would be organized quite often, but these days it's a rare thing. Could you tell us a bit more about this? Well, thank you for inviting me. I've been listening from the beginning what the cleanup workers were saying, and I listened to Elena. Let me start by adding to what was already said. She said that there is information in the museum that the level of radiation was 75 times higher. Well, that's wrong. It was 75,000 times higher. And people stayed there for 36 hours. And the museum could help them ascertain this level of radiation, because now we have a lot of maps that were declassified since then. And I know that for the medical center for rehabilitation of cleanup workers, they have this information is very valuable to them. But we could do the same for Pripyat residents. And people would like to know what was the level of radiation that they received. This may not help them legally, but purely out of curiosity, just to know, that might be important for them. So our museum is not only a place that collects memory, but we are also a place of communication and a platform that provides social and psychological support to the residents who were relocated, as well as cleanup workers. So we first set up links with Pripyat residents from Tryeshina, for instance. Tamara Krasitska, for instance, does a lot of work in this vein. And since 1992, we've been working together, and our mission was to collect their stories and anecdotal evidence, because we have been working a lot with hypocrisy organizations, European NGOs who were interested in working with the victims. So our mission was to put them in touch with these people, organize meetings, and help them help these people financially, legally. We as a museum, we can't do it, but we can facilitate. And that's what we do. And we have been doing this for decades. And we are proud of this work. And we have conducted this first meeting with Hibakusi in 1992. Starting from 2000, we've been doing this annual event dedicated to Pripyat, and for the first time, Pripyat residents got together for the first time 20 years after they were relocated. And some of them didn't see each other for 20 years, and they finally met on the territory of the museum. And when this happened, we decided to do this annually. We also have organizations from Slavutic. So from the standpoint of cultural projects, we support these people. And I agree. No one needs these people. But our goal is to draw attention of Ukrainian authorities as well as foreign nations to these people. It's a major problem because now we have people in the government who have no idea what Chernobyl is. They're young people, and they believe that real Chernobyl is dead. And we have few visitors. It's mostly on anniversaries. And we also invite regional authorities. And when they see our exhibition, they understand how things were. It's a revelation to them. And we try to convince them that the issues remain unresolved. I think it's a noble mission that our museum is trying to fulfill. We feel committed to keeping this memory alive. Now, you saw what the Japanese journalist said. In Japan, they also have similar issues. And by the way, Hibakushi, who suffered first after the bombings, for 20 years they had no protection. But they eventually had their rights protected and received Hibakushi passports because they united around their common cause, and through this concerted effort, they made sure that their voices were heard. And eventually, this is exactly what happened. Because in 1992, we had a lot of Japanese visiting us, and they wanted to study the law.
But after all those years, it's been amended on numerous occasions. They would remove some articles, have no funding for it, and so forth. But of course, they had a lot of things then embedded and enshrined, and the Japanese would recognize that back then. They said we had no protection. We fought for it for a long time. And now with the victims from Fukushima, there are problems for the people who were displaced, and many of them live in some temporary cottages. Now I live in the temporary cottages. The liquidators in another category that have no protection. And we are disregarding the efficiency of civic movement. This is the consequences of our Soviet mentality. We should not disregard it, should not despise it. And we have to do that instead. And in such efforts, we can accumulate some force. This is necessary. They say, why are you talking about this? You have to be closed, the museum, but such hubs, such social and cultural platforms for discussion, and we have to raise such issues on a continuous basis, not for this generation or the generations leaving us now, but for the ones who are still living, and the posterity, like Hibakushi, the Japanese who suffered in 1945, but back in the 70s and 80s, they gained the status and obtained the recognition and protection. And perhaps we shall overcome someday also this government, with this government in this state. Yes, I think there's no other way. Thank you very much, Anna Korolevska. Thank you very much for your comments, for your work, for your contribution, and I'm very grateful to you. I understand that 75,000 times. I realized that in your museum it was a slip of tongue, but then because perhaps I'm still unaware of the state of 75,000. I cannot imagine the air we are breathing in. And for the young MPs who adopted the laws in the parliament and having discussions whether such people deserve or do not deserve anything, they have to realize this figure 75,000 times. They have to imagine it for their own family, for their own health, and just put themselves in the shoes of such people for them to appreciate this terrible state. It's never for nothing. You preserve the memory. You're a custodian of such memories. Sometimes you feel like your wings are clipped, but and your hands are tied up, but there's no other way. Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you.